Hello YouTube, welcome to the Natural Q&A number 8. This one is for all of your questions that have nothing to do with lifting and you're just curious about my opinion about something or how I feel. All of it goes there, so if you have a question in that regard, you can always post it underneath for the next Q&A. And to anyone who is going to be nice enough to timestamp this, I really appreciate you. You're saving me a lot of time that I can use to make videos. So, let's get on to it today. We have a lot of questions to go through. First questions by Hephaestus. What is your opinion on more drugs being legal? Do you think it doesn't matter because people will use them anyway? I'm assuming your stance is similar to your stance on PEDs. Yes, I'm personally opposed to drugs, any and all drugs. I don't make a distinction. I know that many people see alcohol, for example, as something less dangerous. For me, it's quite the opposite. I actually do believe that alcohol is probably the most dangerous drug because it's the most widespread and it's the one that people abuse the most because it's part of the culture and it's become normalized. And anytime a drug becomes normalized, it's when it does the most damage because people don't realize that they're hurting themselves. And that also answers the first part of the question. I do think that the drug label is incredibly important because it is in reality the only thing that prevents people from taking them. Not necessarily legislation or, the government or any authority figure forbidding people from taking it, but the lexical ability to label something as a drug because it creates a mental block in most people's brain. For a lot of people too, it creates an attraction because it feels illegal and dangerous, but these are few and far between. Most people would shy away from things that are considered by the mainstream to be bad just because they follow the herd, but this time it's actually beneficial. And in that case, I do think that the legalization of drugs is dramatical because it is going to remove that label that was preventing people from taking it. And you see it around the globe with weed legalization, where every single time it's made legal, the consumption explodes, which shows that there are many people who would never do it before and who start doing it afterwards. And it's the same in France. I think it's not legal yet in France, but when it used to be something dangerous and you had to go to a drug dealer to get weed, it was much less widespread, and nowadays it's so easy to get some and the laws are so relaxed that even though it's not technically legal, everyone smokes. And that is terrible because it is a drug and it's damaging to you, your health, and your mental well-being. So I'm absolutely against the legalization of any drug. And I do think also that going to war against drugs is not necessarily a good idea because it's not thinking about the problem the right way. To get people to not take drugs, you don't force them or coerce them or punish them. Instead, you show them why drugs are bad. You explain to them with words the impact on their lives. Because something that ensures that someone is going to go and try and do things is to forbid it. We are all children and we all like to do things that we were told we're not supposed to do. And so if you take away that rebellious aspect of anti-drug campaigns, it would actually be much more potent because the truth always prevails. And if you show people the truth and the reality of drugs, there will be plenty and enough to get people to never actually pursue them. But I still do believe that people use drugs. People have always used drugs, and that's for one simple reason. A lot of people like to escape from their reality, and therefore they will seek any way to do that. But this is no justification for making it widespread. Since these people, these deviants, will always exist, we can assume that any type of legislation we put in place need to be thought out without these people in mind, because at the end of the day, no amount of effort will prevent these people from taking the drugs. So they are not part of the equation. We need to think about the rest, the people that can be influenced. And I do the same thing with PEDs. I know that there's always going to be people who take drugs and say, oh, I don't care what happens to me. Okay, great. You do you on your side. We don't care what happens to you. Cool. I care about the other people, the people that can be swayed. These people are important. Question 2. Have you ever been in a one-sided relationship? What's the best way to deal with heartbreak from a relationship? So by one-sided, I think you mean that, for example, I would be in love or I would be attracted to the person and they wouldn't reciprocate. That's never happened to me. I've been in the other type of relationship where I was the one who was not interested and the person was invested, which is just as bad because in that case it was my fault. So my advice on this is, if you're the one who's just being led on, you need to build some self-respect, understand that you're worth something, and stop giving yourself freely to people who don't deserve you, and break free, break loose. You will find also that by doing that, you are becoming much more likely to enter a healthy relationship in the future because you will have strict boundaries. Boundaries are very important in a relationship. And a relationship is a two-way street. It's not an equality because no relationship is truly equal, but it needs to be as close to equal as possible. So if you're being dominated and you never get your way or your say, leave. This is a toxic relationship. Likewise, if you're in the position of the dominant, understand and have the maturity to realize that you are damaging the other person's integrity and free will, and break them free, break them loose. Maybe have a talk with them. It's going to be tough because most likely you have that plaything that does whatever you want and it feeds your ego as well. But for your own soul and also for the person's well-being, have the decency to not be a tyrant, even though you have the ability to be. I'm going to be honest, if you're a guy and you have a good situation, you make good money, you're good looking, you're going to have the opportunity and power to manipulate women because they're going to try and secure you at all costs because you're rare. And that can lead you to, sadly abuse these women and lead them on. As a man, as someone who, again, seeks to be virtuous, you should avoid that at all costs. Don't do that to people. As for heartbreak, I've been heartbroken, I think, once. Best thing to do is let time fly and don't do anything rash. Many people, they feel heartbroken, so they do something rash to get out of it, like a rebound, they bang someone random, or they start taking drugs, they party hard. All of that are toxic coping mechanisms because you're trying to get away from the heartbreak and the feeling of pain. Embrace that feeling. This is something that you get. The amount of heartbreak you go through is proportional to the amount of love and affection you had to the person. So it's a debt that you're paying. I know it sucks. I know you feel depressed. Go through with it. Don't try to escape it because it's like grief. You have to actually ingest and digest that feeling for it to go away and for you to be stronger and free. If you just run away from it, it's never going to go away and you're not going to be able to build back from a healthy base towards your next relationship that is supposed to be better, because the goal at the end of the day is to find the right person. Lifting is also a good thing, although don't let yourself be consumed by lifting to the point where it becomes your life. Use the fuel and use the negative energy of the heartbreak to push your limits, but don't let yourself be devoured by that same hate. Question 3. Opinion on not wanting and encouraging your partner to not do drugs. Is it too controlling, or does it show that you care? And do you think it's shallow to reject a girl over their drug use? Okay, very good questions you have. So, I 100% believe that you should encourage your partner to not take drugs, of course, because you should encourage everyone to not take drugs. And on not wanting to do drugs with your partner or letting them do drugs, it's not controlling. It's called being a good person. Because if they take drugs, they don't know any better, they don't know what they're doing to themselves. So tell them strictly, hey, you need to stop doing that. It's a toxic thing that I will not allow in my life. If they're not happy with that, break free from that. They are consumed by the drug. They are in a relationship with the drug more than in a relationship with you. Although I would say also that if you feel for that person and you have a lot of feelings for them, and you see that they are deeply entrenched in their addiction, maybe try it slowly. Right? For me, for example, I was dating someone who was smoking weed. I could have just told them, okay, go fuck yourself. But I understood that this addiction was coming from trauma and that if I helped them through it, they would eventually get free from their addiction. And they did. They broke free from their weed addiction. And therefore, it's on you to decide. Do you think it's worth the investment to actually guide that person? I think that sometimes it actually can be, but it's a slow process. You need patience because you can't force someone to give up on drugs. They have to decide it themselves. And sometimes you're going to have to deal with their rash behavior where they're going to try and get back to the drugs to deal and cope with the trauma. And it's going to be tough to stop them because it's such an immediate solution that it's very tempting to these people. But yes, trying to talk people out of doing drugs is showing that you care, because you cannot build a future and a family with someone on drugs. It's not possible. The drug will always be on their mind. It's always going to take priority over anything else. And please, please, if you're dating someone who's on drugs, don't even have kids, because you're going to ruin the kid's life. Having a parent that's an addict is no fun. And if you think you can protect them, you can't. They're going to be messed up. So only have families and build something with healthy, clean individuals. And yes, absolutely reject people for their drug use. I mean, for me, it's weed that I sort of tolerate and try to just eliminate when I can. But anything like heavy alcohol use, cigarettes, a girl that smokes, I will not go out with her. Which is funny, because in Paris, every single girl smokes, and I still never budge from that rule, which cost me a lot of relationships. But I was like, you're killing yourself actively and you smell like shit. I'm not going to go out with you. That's as simple as that. So you should. And of course, hard drugs are out of the question entirely. And last question, question 4. Do you think it's true that if someone could talk you out of your dream, you didn't really want it in the first place? Yes, absolutely. Because it should be so ingrained in you that it's a part of your personality and who you are. So if I can just say something to you that makes you change your mind, then did you really believe in that in the first place? I don't think so. A lot of people who can be swayed like this were people who were never really solid in the first place. You need to be solid. 2-1. What do you think of being a teacher nowadays? I feel like the profession doesn't get as much respect as it used to. Moreover, I don't think they're getting paid enough for their efforts. Hope you answer my question. You are amazing and have a nice day. Have a nice day too. So, I was a teacher. I'm still a teacher to an extent. I think that it's one, if not the most important profession in the modern world, and it's always been, because it's the perpetuation of knowledge. It's passing down information that is going to lead to better, healthier, more productive individuals down the line. The issue is that what teaching has become is the exact opposite. Teachers nowadays tend to be sort of lost in the way they approach their curriculum. Meaning that I've seen teachers who had a decent understanding of their subject matter, but were completely incapable of passing it down because they were only trained on their subject and never on teaching. And to me, teaching by itself is the most important component, and it's an art. To be a good teacher, you need to have something. You need to be able to connect with people. You need to be authoritative because your kids need to respect you, and you need to have an ability to pass down the knowledge. If you are amazingly gifted at like math, for example, but you can't explain it to save your life, you make the topic boring and confusing, you're a bad teacher, and therefore you shouldn't be teaching. And the problem is that I can count on the finger of one hand the amount of teachers I respected or liked who actually knew what they were doing. And it's a sad state of affair, because it means that a lot of the time I was not really engaged in class, not because of me, but because of the teacher. And since I wasn't, the classroom wasn't, so people weren't really learning as much as they could. And that is because the training that teachers go through, as I told you, is not enough nowadays, which also explains why they get paid so low, because now any random idiot can be a teacher. In France, for example, if you just have a bachelor in history, you can be a replacement teacher, which is insane. You don't know how to teach. There's, of course, it's the reason why you hear all of those horror stories about teachers who get bullied. Yeah, because you don't know how to actually stand in front of a classroom. I can tell you, when I was teaching, when the class started, I didn't have to say a word. I would just stand there and look at them until there was silence, complete silence. Because they knew that if there was no silence, I would not start my class. So what they would do is they would normalize each other, and I would have kids chastise other kids and be like, hey, shut up, he's trying to teach. That's how you do it. The problem is that I had 0 classrooms like that growing up. All of my classrooms were like with noise, rambunctious, because the teachers, again, lacked authority. It doesn't help, of course, that many teachers are women, which is not really their fault. But the problem is that they don't possess the necessary charisma to be respected, especially by young or teenage boys. And so they can't pass down the knowledge that they have because they were not taught properly. I had older teachers that were women that knew how to make themselves respected even though they weighed 90 pounds. It's something that you need to actually learn But yes, in a perfect world, the teachers would be paid a lot of money, but they would also do a very good job, which they're not doing. Ellie Darling, are you gonna make vids on my favorite characters like Raian or Muteba? Yes, I will. So basically, the second you see me doing a muscle manga or any type of video in reality on one manga in particular, this means that I'm going to make a ton of other videos. And when it comes to muscle manga, every time a character is muscular, he's going to get a muscle manga. It's just that these episodes take a long time. They only come out once a week, and so you only get 52 a year, more or less. So all the characters will be done, but it's always a surprise when it's gonna come out. Fien Van Hout, is there anything somebody can do who likes watching your videos in terms of helping with the channel? Well, the best thing you can do for the channel is archive. Download the videos and archive them somewhere, because as I told you, I have no control over YouTube. I don't know what YouTube does. I stay updated to protect the channel as much as I can, but I can't predict what they do. They're completely unpredictable. And if the channel gets deleted, it's deleted. It's too small for me to have a privileged relationship with YouTube to save it. And therefore, the best way to protect the channel would be to actually archive the vids, download them and put them somewhere else, because I just don't have the time or bandwidth to do that. Highbrow, do you think anything revolutionary can happen with philosophy again, or has all the core concepts been dissected already? Very good question. It's something that I was thinking about, because growing up, I only had access, at least in the media, to contemporary philosophers in my country of France, and they were all terrible. Meaning that I would read them and be like, all right, there is nothing there. Like the concepts are poor, the syntax is just missing. What is going on here? Is that supposed to be philosophy? Then I discovered writers, French writers from 300 years ago, and I was mind blown at the quality and the depth of the reasoning. And so it made me believe that, just like you are surmising here, that it was because philosophy is spent. Like, we emptied the well and there's nothing more to say, so anyone who writes about philosophy by default resonates emptily. But that's, I think, not what is happening, because what I think happened is this. The people who write about philosophy have that mindset of thinking that everything has already been done, and therefore they refuse to explore. And we see that on YouTube Fitness as well. It's the reason why YouTube Fitness falls so stagnant nowadays. It's because no one innovates. And in a sense, the few that innovate do it improperly because they invent gimmicks, but they don't think about concepts. And the problem is that it leads to the idea that everything has been covered, which is not true. Not even 40% of the topics about bodybuilding have been covered, but it's because people have stopped looking because they feel comfortable with what they have. And so it's the reason why nowadays philosophy, modern philosophy, is deeply lacking. But great news is we can simply revisit the writings of the ancients, and every single time you read a book from someone who existed a long time ago and who wrote about philosophy, a new book is birthed into your brain, because the concepts evolve with time. And so I believe that we can always find new concepts, and we can always develop the ones that are already pre-existing. We can always find a way to push the bow. And I think I'll try to do that with the channel, with lifting, but you'll see that in many domains, just like with anything in life, when there is a law, there's always a rebirth at some point, and there will be a revolution very soon that is going to impact the world of philosophy with new authors, with new concepts. That is absolutely necessary. But of course, it will take people not only looking at the past, but also focusing on the future. Booty Boyo, which most likely is pronounced Buddy Boyo. Will you do OnlyFans? No, because I'm of course firmly opposed to prostitution in every form, and OnlyFans is a form of prostitution. And the very idea and concept of getting naked in front of a camera and people paying for it is silly to me. I've never actually understood how OnlyFans could exist. I will talk about it in the NoFap video because it's interesting, but with the way internet is going, I don't get the mindset of people who pay for naked pictures when there's millions available. It's part of the parasocial in a sense. It's because they think they're buying a relationship, which they are not. So of course I will not participate in that system of exploitation of the human body. Size. Just a guess. Is the announcement a natural bodybuilding show? Yes. Bullseye. Actually, if you remember the last Q&A, I told you there would be a lot of change on the channel, but nothing happened. And nothing happened because the bodybuilding show that was announced was cancelled. It never actually materialized. So what I wanted to do is I was going to revamp, quote unquote, the channel and focus on the show. I was going to film some full body workouts for you guys, 4 days of eating for you guys, and just do that for the duration of the prep, but it never happened. So you can look forward to when it actually does. The problem is that nowadays the big channels that could actually do that on YouTube Fitness are, they have cold feet because there's no money to be made nowadays in natural bodybuilding, and even in online bodybuilding shows in reality. So they just won't do it. I'm keeping an eye out. The second a big channel does one, I will participate, but for now there's nothing. So we'll see. Isyovia, what do you think about time travel? Is it possible? Risk, benefits, etc.? So, interesting question, time travel. Well, we know it's possible on paper, but technically, we run into a lot of problems because if you have access to the speed of light and above the speed of light, technically you can go back in time, but then you have to think about the energy expended during the travel, the fact that you have to go into a certain direction, the fact that the expenditure of energy plus the time that you have to actually travel physically to travel back in time is compounded, etc., etc. What I think about it is that it's fascinating. It tends to be a crutch that bad authors rely on because in reality, I believe that the time travel trope is one that requires a lot of brain power because you have to keep track of many things. And in a sense, since you're entering the realm of multi-dimensional writing, because now you're entering different timelines, right? You have to keep in mind so many details that reverberate throughout the timelines, which means also that a lot of the time when there is time travel in a novel or a series or whatever, it tends to be trash because it's full of things that just don't match. Like for example, Dragon Ball Z, which I love, but if you look at the trunk timeline, the future trunk, Mirai trunk, the entire story makes no sense because there's a lot of things that just don't match. And so anytime you actually introduce time travel to a story, you have to be very careful. It's like the notion of a new word. For the people who read manga, you're very aware of that. When you open the map and you say, oh, there is a new continent that's gigantic or a new place to visit, it's dangerous because c'est une remise en question. It now shines a light on the wood that you previously created, and you have to make sure it matches. A manga that did that amazingly is One Piece. One Piece with the new wood understood perfectly how to introduce that trope. One that did it very poorly is Toriko. For the people who have read Toriko, the new wood introduction killed the manga. And something that I'm afraid of with Hunter x Hunter, if we even get to that point, which I don't think, is that it's going to also kill the story because it's not going to be dealt with properly. For the risks and benefits, the risks are immense because, well, anything you do, if you go in the past, can modify the future. And if you go into the future, you can also modify the past. So it's tough to think even about something that would be useful to do because if something has to be modified in the past, it has already been. And if something needs to be changed in the future, it has been done as well. That's also the paradox of time travel, is that it happens instantaneously in every single timeline at the same time. So if we, measly humans, manage one day to time travel, I'm afraid that we're going to use it completely inappropriately, just like we've done with any advanced technology that we put our hands on. Although I would say that if we do, I hope that we would be at a point in our development where we're mature enough and we've solved other issues. But considering the amount of tech we need to accumulate before time travel happens, I'm not too worried about that. Plus, I will be long dead when it happens. Saif Ali, do you have tips on how to quickly move on from regret? Yes, regret is a feeling that I'm very familiar with because the first portion of my life was nothing but regret. And until I realized one day that I needed to stop accumulating ghosts and things that I wish I had done, I was dealing with a ton of it. And the best way to move forward from it is also the best way to make sure that in the future you don't have to deal with it is understand that to be able to not feel regret, you need to take firm decisions and you need to not let your fear dictate your actions. That means that if you want to do something, but the thing holding you back is fear of any type, this is a sign that you should be doing it, because this is going to haunt you in the future and you want to prevent that from happening. So if it has happened and you sadly accumulated regret like I did, one, you need to forgive yourself, understand that you have moved on from that version of you that was completely inactive and wimpy, and make a promise to yourself that you will make sure that in the future it doesn't happen. There's a quote that I like, but it's a double-edged sword. It's better to have remorses than regrets. What does it mean? It's better to have done something and regret it than not having done anything and regret something that you never did. The reason why it's dangerous is that it could lead you to just do random bullshit that you are going to feel ashamed of. But on a theoretical level, I like it because it means this. It is best to act and then regret the act than never act in the first place. And for anyone that listens to my voice right now, I think that it is something to take to heart. I trust in your judgment. If you go out and you do something, it's because you thought about it. Have trust in yourself and don't cockblock yourself out of life, out of living, because you think that, oh no, it's going to go bad. You don't know that. Take that shot, take that risk, and then if it goes bad, you'll deal with it. Because if anything, if it does go bad, it's going to be an opportunity for yourself to actually deal with that and challenge yourself, and it's going to make you grow. But if you don't do anything, you can stay stunted. I know many people like this, because regret is inaction, and inaction is stagnation. Rock Carlos. What do you think are the characteristics of a real man? You inspired me to ask that when you started your tale about the Muslims in the USA. P.S. Where do I post my question? Well, you posted it right there, so good job. What are the characteristics of a real man? Well, see, this is an interesting question. Because everyone has their own definition of what a real man is. And there is, of course, an overarching definition that many people will tell you is the mainstream, and they're correct, which is more of an archetype than a definition of the real man. And I subscribe to some of it, but not all of it. For me, a real man is someone who is true to themselves, who is a self to start with, so they have a strong identity that they developed. They don't budge from it easily. They help others. They utilize their development to help others develop themselves. They are kind. To me, it's an integral part of being a man, but not nice, which is very different. Nice is when society forces you to do certain things like being polite because you don't have a choice. And being kind is understanding that you're doing it because it's the right thing to do. These are different. Many people are nice, they are not kind. The second the eyes of others and the judgment of others is gone, they do despicable shit all the time. Being kind means that you're going to do the right thing every single time, even if you get no credit, even if it hurts you in the long run. All of that is what makes a real man. And therefore, it's also the spirit of sacrifice. To me, that's what makes a man. And in a sense, it is very archetypal because for me, something like gallantry, something like being chivalrous, protecting the weak, that's being a man. I know that it's being deconstructed nowadays, both by the feminists and the anti-feminists, because the feminists say that it's basically pointing out at women and saying that women are inferior to men, and some men say, well, fuck that. If women are just going to act like this, then I'm not going to help them, and if I do, I'm a simp. You see that a ton. People who think that actually protecting women is being a simp. No, it's being a man. It's understanding that they are physically inferior and that we protect them, not because they're weak, but because they're precious. They're extremely precious, just like kids. We need to put our strength on the line to protect our future, and our future is right there. The future is not you. The future is the people around you that are going to perpetuate the community. So that to me is being a man, which means sometimes sacrificing yourself, yes. In certain situations, you should be able to tell yourself, okay, my life is less important in this instant than the life of these people. And it's tough to get to that point, but to me, that is the moment where you express yourself as a male the most. You should also, in my opinion, be physically active. I don't foresee a future or a potential man that I would respect that is just, built like a house of spaghettis. I don't really see that happening. It's not possible. And it can do anything. It's not just lifting. It can be your runner or your swimmer. All of that works. Just use your body. As a man, you are spirit and body. And the animal part of you is mostly body. So if you're not able to actually tap into that, well, you cannot be called a man. You can be called a man in spirit maybe, but even that doesn't really work, because to have a strong masculine dominant spirit, you need to have a dominant physique and presence about you. What else is there about being a real man, being productive? Because we were born and put on this earth to be productive, being spirited and vital. That's what being a man is, being vital. Okay, all of the people who say, oh, my life sucks, you're not a man. You have in you the potential to be one, but you need to reclaim that potential, because right now you're nothing. You're not a man, you're not a woman, you're a sort of ghost that does nothing and just whines about his situation. So get after it, be a real man. Having kids, in my opinion, passing down your genes and having a strong patriarchal structure within your family and passing down your knowledge to your sons and your daughters, making them strong, making them resilient, building something, that to me is being a man. My grandpa, for example, he built a house, he had 4 kids, he has 10 grandkids, he has 5 or 6 great-grandchildren. When he sits down at the table at dinner and he looks down, he sees what he built. It's all of us. That to me is being a man. That guy is a man's man. So that's that. There's many more things to say, but I will eventually make a video about masculinity. Actually, many videos about that topic. So I'll tell more about that at this time. Blade strike. Do you discriminate against or in favor of people based on their physique? I'm not talking unconscious bias. I'm referring to actively judging someone's personality, work ethic, intelligence, honesty based on their physique, even if it's technically irrelevant for their profession. Okay, very good, complete question. The answer is yes. I judge people immediately the second I see them, because to me, the way you look is an important sign or indicator of who you are. For example, if you're fat, I know that you're some level of lazy, that you have no impulse control, that you are easily tempted by instant gratification, that you are wasteful because you're eating food that you don't need to be eating, and most likely some level or another of food addict. That's me judging people based on their looks, but it's always usually on point. So that's one. I don't judge people based on characteristics they cannot control. So race, height, facial features, all of that is irrelevant to me. I look past that because it gives me no clear indications. I can surmise certain informations of you based on these, but since there are factors you cannot control, it also means that it's not going to be very precise, and it can lead to actual imprecisions in my judgment, so I stay away from that. But for the closers, for certain types of get-ups that some people have, yeah, I'm going to use information that I can see so that I can create an image of you in my head so that I'm not surprised. But a lot of people have actually came out and surprised me plentifully, and when it happens, je me braque pas, like we say in French. Many people, they react negatively when their idea in their head doesn't match the reality, they get upset. No, for me, I'm always happy when someone surprises me. I'm always happy to replace the actual truth from my preconceived notion in my head. So that's a conscious bias that I'm constantly activating because, well, one, it's a biological and survival bias, because being able to read people is very important in survival. And two, it's also, in a sense, like an exercise of mind, because being able to read people accurately is actually very useful in many environments, like academia, especially when you have to, be careful about what you say. If I can look at you and I can tell from which political side of the spectrum you're on, I can manipulate my discourse to make sure that you're not going to rat me out to the guy who's like a Marxist and works in X office that is going to get me fired. And it's part of, hiding your power levels. You don't want to reveal who you are. With your clothing, with your accessories on you, with your inflections of voice, you need to be a closed book, because it's better to be a closed book in a world of open books than the other way around, because it allows you to hide your cards. and play them smartly and play them at the right moment too. Taylor Thomas, do you think you can save yourself? Or do you realize that it is God who saves us by grace? So this is a portion and a part of Christianity, especially, that I don't subscribe to at all, and that I don't like. Because I don't like the idea of letting my redemption being up to someone else. And it's the reason why I also don't consider Jesus or God as my saviors. They can be guides, they can be, in a sense, superior entities to me, but they cannot save me. And I know it's a portion of the religion that always puzzled me a bit, because I feel like it's taking the responsibility away from me and putting it on God. But God is not responsible for the redemption and the salvation of my soul. I am. He will be the judge, sure, but the travel and the journey towards that is on me. You could say, if you want to, that at the end he is the one to decide if the saving of my soul happens through grace or not, but the person who has to meet the criteria is me at the end of the day. So he's not saving me. If anything, he's giving me the stamp of approval, right? If you're saying that in the sense that we are saved by God when we follow his teachings, then I agree to an extent. Now it's much more relevant in my opinion, because it still leaves the onus of personal responsibility on me. Raian Eustace, regarding the vaccine, have you not been forced to get it for work? An opinion on mandates in general vaccine passports. So I have not been forced yet. If I do get forced, I will quit or let them fire me, because I will, of course, never let a company dictate what I put in my body. And if anything, if they have to bully me into taking it, then it's a clear sign that it's not good for me. So it's going to just strengthen my belief that this is just another money grab by Big Pharma. So that's not going to happen. And the opinion on mandates and general vaccine passports. Well, it's something that I personally knew was going to happen when it started. I could feel it. And it was funny because back in the days when you told that to people, they would tell you, oh no, it's crazy, it's just a conspiracy theory. Well, there we are. There is the conspiracy theory, and it was so obvious that of course they were going to do it. Because now they can actually force people to buy their product, and why wouldn't they do it? If they can literally use your freedom of movement as a bargaining chip to force you to buy their bullshit, they will do it, always. So my opinion is that it's completely anti-human, it's anti-freedom, and it's fascism, plain and simple. Forcing people to do something with their body, or else you take away their ability to work or to travel, is the definition of authoritarianism. And therefore I don't stand for it, because I stand for freedom. So I will personally not be participating in that system of oppression. If I'm forced to do anything in fear of retribution, I will not be doing it. And if it means that I never get to travel again, well, so be it. I will never travel again in my life. Ted Wood, have you ever read any Gundam? No, not really, because the big robot thing, like with like Power Rangers and Gundam and Bioman and all of that stuff, it never really spoke to me, because I'm not really a mechanic type of guy. Like cars, I don't care about cars at all. It doesn't resonate with me at all. Like Transformers, I've never watched a single Transformer movie because they bore me to death. So Gundam is not something I read. I haven't even watched Evangelion, which I know is incredible. Evangelion, what is the other one? Gurren Lagann, I think, is also one that I haven't never seen, because the theme of big robots fighting each other, I don't find it interesting on a symbolical level, if that makes sense. Even though I know these are amazing mangas and pieces of animation, it's just I can't find it in me. So maybe one day I'll change, who knows? But for now I haven't. Minicrit, in your arguments in the past Q&A, so Q&A number 7, you said that Islam plays a role in this. Not really sure what you mean, can you elaborate? So, from memory, I lengthily spoke about Islam last time, and I said that Islam played a role in the destruction of Christianity in France. And it's, of course, a very mysterious statement. So I'm glad that you asked so that I can actually explain to you guys what I meant. So what I mean by this is Islam is cohabitating with Christianity in France. France, which is a Christian country, by the way, it was founded on Christianity. It used to not be Christian, of course, but just like the rest of Europe, it got converted. And the bulk of France was built off of that, off of Christianity. Whether you like it or not, some people actually want to go back before that, the time of paganism and, you know, the separate regions. I don't necessarily disagree with that mindset, but it's just not what happened. But now Islam is actually coming into France. It's been coming since the 60s, and so it now plays a big role in France. And you could think, well, do you think that this is the reason why Christianity is dying, is because Islam is killing it? And I don't think so. At least not in the way you think. I don't think Islam is the one responsible for the dispersion of Christianity, but I do think that by shining so brightly, Islam is putting Christianity in the shadow, a shadow that Christianity puts itself in. It's not Islam's fault. What I mean by this is that Islam is strong. As a religion, if I were to describe Islam in one word, it would be strong. And anything that is strong is attractive. One of my favorite quotes is, sadly, from Osama bin Laden, who said that between a weak and a strong horse, people will always pick the strong horse. And that is a quote that is absolutely true across the line. Meaning that for a religion to attract followers and believers, it needs to be strong. The problem is that when you have a very strong religion like Islam, who cohabitates with a weak religion like Christianity, it gets trampled. And I'm not saying that Christianity across the board is weak, but in France it is. It has been weakened by laicity, which was in 1905, forcing the church to separate from the state, removing the privileges from the church, which has led to the slow but certain destruction of Christian values in France that has been replaced by atheism. But the problem is that human beings are not able to function without religion. It is something that I am personally fully aware and certain of. And therefore, atheism in reality is a vacuum. It's an empty space that is just waiting to be filled. And Islam filled that. Islam came in the 60s when Christianity was already pretty much dead in France. And it just took its spot. And I can tell you for a fact that if things go as they are going nowadays, Islam will be the biggest religion in France in 20 years maybe. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, I'm just saying that it is a fact. It will happen unless there is a resurgence in Christianity. Now, why did Christianity die and why is Islam so much stronger? For one simple reason. Muslims are proud people and they're not afraid of talking about their religion and defending it at all costs. And that is what makes all the difference. Because if we're talking converting people, if you're going to join a club and you go up to someone and you talk to them and you tell them, okay, tell me about your club, like convince me to join your club, and the person never looks at you in the eye and, you know, they have a weak voice and they say, well, you know, it's a good club, we know we're like not good, I can't really say good, you know, we're okay, it's an okay club. And I'm like, all right, can you tell me about the club? And they're like, sure. There's this thing that we say that's nice, and then there's maybe this, and then you press them and they barely know anything. You're not going to join that club because one, the person doesn't even look happy to be part of the club. Two, they know nothing about the club, so it's not attractive. Then you go talk to a Muslim, the guy is going to look at you in the eye, he's going to give you a firm handshake, he's going to tell you, hey, you should join Islam. Islam is the truth. Allah is the truth. You need to submit to Allah and your life will be better. We have the keys to happiness, it's in Islam. Everything is in Islam. And he will welcome you in the mosque, he will present you to people, they will talk to you. If you talk to the guy about the Quran, he will cite you like precise passages. He will explain things to you. He will look passionate about Islam. You're going to join that. Because it's attractive, it's strong. And you want to be part of that. Because it's like a big family. And that is the thing. It's the reason why I told you atheism creates vacuums to be filled by religion because atheism is nothing. It's not a fraternity. It doesn't have any concepts. Atheism is a void that it's trying to fill with science, but that science cannot fill until it becomes a religion, which is the reason why many people actually who follow science and believe science are actually indoctrinated in the scientism religion. But that's a different talk altogether. For the rest of people, they're just waiting for their religion to save them. And many people without religion feel lost and they need someone to guide them. And Islam is guiding people. Whether it's guiding them towards a good or a bad future, I won't say, but it is guiding people. And so, Christianity just cannot compete. It's the reason why churches are being destroyed all the time and why mosques are being built all the time and why there's more and more Muslims and less Christians, because the strong religion is just that attractive. Then there are also other factors like demographic factors, the fact that Muslims actually force, there's no other way to say that, force their kids to convert because they have perfectly understood that if you don't do that, the religion dies. And it's not a critique, by the way, I'm just saying, it's the reason why Christianity is dead, is because parents were told by the government that they were not supposed to indoctrinate their kids and that their kids were free to choose. So they told their kids, oh, just do what you want. And so that led to a generation of atheists that just were never really brought up in the religion, that gave birth to more atheists. Meanwhile, a family of Muslims that have 4 kids gave birth to 4 more Muslims that will give birth to Muslims. It's the reason why Islam is expanding so quickly, is because, again, they have faith in their religion and they just enter it willingly with their heart. And so, it destroys the other religions. I'm not even talking about violent acts, because you don't even need to be violent. Islam just needs to exist to completely eclipse Christianity in France. And until Christians start behaving a little bit more like Muslims and they start being proud and actually studying the Bible and spreading the word of Jesus and carrying crosses around their necks, then it's never gonna change. I barely see crosses when I go in France. No one has crosses around their necks. That is a fault. It's a sign that people are afraid to show their religion. They're afraid to defend it. And if they don't change, they're going to disappear. And that would just be natural selection. Eziovia. Apart from anime manga, are you a fan of movies, books, series like Indiana Jones, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Hunger Games, Marvel, DC Universe, etc., etc.? Before I answer that, let me check the time because it's been a while already. Alright, so let's see. Are you a fan of movies, book series? Indiana Jones, no, because I think it came out when I was too young to really consume these movies. Plus, I find them boring. I'm sorry for the people who watch them. I don't really resonate with that. Star Wars, I like, but it's sort of the same thing. I was born within the period of time where the old movies were already out and the new ones were not out yet. So I was in that lull in between the sagas. And the first movies looked old to me. I didn't really like them at all. And then the new ones came out and I sort of liked them, which I know is going to make some people scream. Yes, I like the most recent trilogy. Not most recent because there's the Disney bullshit, but I don't see it as canon. I like number 1, 2, and 3, and number 3 is actually my favorite movie of all time. Number 2 actually might be my third favorite, and number 1 was just bad. But I like Star Wars, but I'm not a big Star Wars head. It's not really part of my my pop culture in a sense. Lord of the Rings, however, now we're starting to talk about something interesting. Yes, I love Lord of the Rings. I read The Hobbit when I was a kid. I love that book. It scared the living shit out of me. I remember the story of the spider and everything. Ooh, but I really liked it. And it's my favorite book out of any Tolkien book, because it has an atmosphere that was never replicated in any other Lord of the Rings books, for example. I can't explain it, but it's mysterious. There's an air of creepiness. When I'm reading The Hobbit, I cannot help but picture in my mind the mountain in the distance. I think that it's something that the book does amazingly well. You're always reminded of the looming mountain in the distance with the dragon in it, and it has an evocative power that is very powerful for me. It really speaks to me. So Lord of the Rings, the only issue I have with the series is that I read the books, Lord of the Rings, after I watched the movie. And this, in my opinion, is a bad idea, because then I had preconceived notions about the characters and I couldn't let my brain do the imaginative work because it was already done for me, which is why I think I like The Hobbit more, is because I read The Hobbit before watching the movies, which is also why I hate the movies, because I think they're really bad, but I love the Lord of the Rings movies and not as much the book. Harry Potter was a big part of my childhood, like many people my age. because I read it literally at the moment where I was the exact same age as the hero. When I read the book number 1, I was 10, 11, and then every single book I was the same age. And that is, if you want to set up a parasocial relationship, if you're the same age as the hero of a book, it's bingo. It's in the bank. It's the best way to actually resonate and to identify with the books. And I can tell you, and I know it's sad, but I know many people did the same thing. I was expecting to get a letter from Hogwarts, and I remember being devastated that when I didn't get it. I knew deep down that it wasn't going to happen, but I was still hoping. And so those books were my life. I think I read every single one of them at least 20 times, and the 3, which is my favorite of the saga, at least 40 times. I read that book so much that it fell apart because I would turn the pages and everything. It's fallen apart. And it actually became a tradition in my family where my mom would get me the book on the day it came out, and on that day I was allowed to skip school. And we're talking like an immigrant mom. Skipping school was like never. I went to school with a broken ankle, but on that day I was allowed because she knew what it meant to me. I loved these books. The movies also I love because they all came out a year or two after I read the book. Keep in mind that the books I read were in French, so I know that if you read them in English, the movies actually came out a long time afterwards. But in France, they were like, book comes out, movie about the book is the next year. So it was an endless mania. I was always in it. But now thinking back, I see that the books have many problems, especially ideologically, because, and that's my canon theory, I don't have proof, I think that J.K. Rowling is not the author of the books. I personally think that she has a ghostwriter that actually authored the books because she doesn't understand what she wrote. If she actually wrote it, then it's a fluke. Because when you listen to her talk about her story, it's like she doesn't get what she did. Like, all of the story about like Voldemort and the Death Eaters, all of that is not Manichaeism. It's not, oh, they're the mean ones and the other ones are the good ones. It's more intricate than that. They have good points. They make good points. They're trying to preserve the magic wood, whereas the other idiots are just like, oh, we'll see what happens if we just open up to the wood. It's a very good example of conservatism versus the progressive mindset, which both have merits, but none of them is correct. And you see that in the books, it's never black or white. The Death Eaters are never presented as just evil. And yet, she somehow loses that plot completely when she talks about it in interviews. So I'm like, are you really the author of these books? You don't even understand the themes that you put in them. So who knows? But so that's for Harry Potter. Hunger Games, I read them when I was older, so they didn't have the same impact, but I do love these books. They're actually really good. Marvel and DC Universe, this flies like this. I have nothing in my heart for comics. I just don't like him. If you tell me what is my favorite superhero, I don't know because I don't like superheroes. Mangas occupy the space that comics occupy in many people's life. So I'm not a fan of that at all, and that is going to close that for that question. AQRN. Have you ever practiced a martial art? If not, will you ever practice one? And if you will, what will it be? So, the martial arts I practiced, I did judo for 2 years. I did taekwondo for 4 years. I did wrestling for 4 years. I did boxing for a year. So that's the extent of my martial arts career. I did judo when I was, I think, 5 to 6 or 5 to 7. And I told that story already in the past, but I quit because I got into a tournament to win my orange or yellow belt, I don't remember which one. And I got into a match with a girl, and she would constantly grab my hair to stop me from throwing her. So I would like do a hip throw or something, and she would reach out and grab my hair so I couldn't throw her. And I remember looking at the arbiter like, what the fuck? She's not allowed to do that. And at some point, she just threw me down when I had already scored 5 ippons on her. And I just look at, and the guy gave her the win, and I was like, what? So on that day, I just quit. I was like, all right, fuck it. What is that sport? I don't know what was going on with that guy, if he was just giving her, prefer her treatment or anything, but it disgusted me from the sport. And then I did taekwondo in middle school and wrestling. I was bad at both. Actually, I was better at taekwondo because I was good at kicks. Wrestling, I wasn't so hot. And then boxing, but boxing I really liked. I was really gifted at it too. But the problem with boxing is that it was interfering with my basketball, and I had to make a choice. And a funny story, quote unquote, I went to the doctor for an eye exam, and they found out that I have a very high propensity for detached retinas. And so it sort of facilitated my choice, because I was like, all right, I don't want to, potentially lose sight in one of my eyes. So I chose basketball instead. And if you will, what will it be in the future? Well, right now I'm 100% focused on bodybuilding. But if there's one I would maybe do in the future, it would be jiu-jitsu most likely, because it's very attractive. And I think it also is easy, quote unquote, to pair with lifting. And it's something I could see myself do. So maybe. Gains disciple. What are your thoughts on marriage between individuals who differ in ideologies or worldview? Obviously, no two people are the same. I recognize the benefits to argumentation and the detriments of having someone be just a yes man woman. I'm referring to someone who holds views diametrically opposed to yours on multiple issues, which I think pose a problem. I've seen cases of this, and they can range from a typical couple fight to something downright horrible. To what degree should a couple's belief align or differ? And is there a line that you would draw? Thanks. Very good question. Lots of questions about relationships, which is good because it shows that you guys are interested in building something with women and not just using them as holes, which sadly is the case for many young men. So my thoughts on this is that when you build something with someone, you're going to naturally understand things about them. And you're going to discover who they are. These shouldn't come up in the discussion. You shouldn't have to ask them. You're going to discover them. But there are key things to discuss with your partner early on. First off, before you discuss them, as I said, you need to look at who they are. If there's someone who is very... If there's someone who's very easily tempted by spending their money, and they just throw their money out the window, and you're the opposite, that's a bad sign, because usually it means that you're not going to match with them. If there's someone who likes to travel all the time and you're more of a monk, that's not going to work either. If there's someone who has no ambition and you have a lot of ambition, are you going to be able to actually drag a dead weight with you? Are you going to feel resentful? All of these are things you need to ask yourself. After that, there are discussions to be had. For example, do they want kids? If they don't want kids and it's like a firm no, and you do, that's a deal breaker. It's over. Just quit the relationship. Unless they tell you that they can be convinced and they need time, in which case give it time and see how it evolves. I am personally in a relationship with someone who didn't want kids and they turned their mindset around. So it can happen, especially if you're a male and you're dating a woman and you're in your 20s or 30s. They are the generation that grew up not wanting kids because it's the way culture has told them to lead their life. But the biological imperative in them eventually raises its head and it can change the game. So just be patient. Don't force them to make a decision. Just let them come to their own conclusion without being preachy or pushing them. But if it doesn't match, it doesn't match. After that, there are other things that I would consider not super important in terms of ideological differences. For example, politics. Politics mean absolutely nothing in the bedroom because in life, politics mean nothing. Meaning that I could plug you in a room with someone who is supposedly completely opposed to you, but if you just never open your mouth and talk about politics, you will get along with that person and like them and think they're good people. Because politics only divide us, and it's their goal, it's the goal of politicians, to make us at odds with one another, so we don't focus on actually going after them, because they're the problem. So don't let politics get in between you and your woman or you and your man, and just discuss. I'm with someone who is completely opposed to me in terms of ideology, like black and white, and yet we have good constructive discussions. We sometimes come to agreement, sometimes we don't, but when we don't, we just tell ourselves, okay, we're different, and it's enriching our lives. I'm happy I'm with someone who's not like me, because if I was, I would most likely not be balanced, because they bring me something to think about, and it's something that you touch here. You don't want to be with a yes man or yes woman, because it's just going to make your flaws much more marked and noticeable. Whereas If you have someone who actually is going to have the guts to point out your weaknesses, your contradictions, etc., it's going to give you something to work off of. But of course, you want to be with someone who is going to also be open and receptive to that type of criticism. And the type of couples that you describe are people who ignored the advice I just gave you and they did this. On appelle ça faire l'autruche en français, to play the ostrich or to play possum, which play possum is not really contextual here, but what it means is this. They found someone that they liked, they saw the red flag, but they told themselves, okay, this is my last shot at love, which is always bullshit. I'm just going to ignore it. The problem is that if you ignore red flags, eventually they become gigantic things in the fly, and you suffer from them because you cannot be with someone who has opposing views on certain topics or whose idea of what life constitutes is opposed to, which is why before you get married or have kids, you need to figure out who the person is and see if you can work with that. If you cannot work with that, let them be. Live. Lou, question for Q&A. What do the streets of France look like gang and crime-wise? Well, I haven't been in 2 years, but every time I go back, it's worse. And it was like immediately. I can tell the second I put my foot on the territory that it's getting worse. And it's always the same, what is the term? It's always the same conclusion because I always draw it when we take the route from the airport to where I live and I see like the highway and I see what surrounds it. Homelessness is going up, the amount of violent crimes is going up constantly. I remember going back 2 years ago again, and for a reason I won't disclose, I was forced to bike every single day for 2 hours across Paris. And I would have to go near the highway and everything. I almost got into fights several times, and I'm talking like very serious fights involving knives, because people were so angry. I couldn't. It was like the purge, like honestly. And I've seen things back then that scared me, and I'm not easily scared, but things that showed me that society was on the verge of collapsing. I remember seeing an old man walking the streets and just pushing scooters. Like he would push scooters and they would shatter on the floor, laughing maniacally. And when you get to the point where old people have nothing left to lose, that they can just go like this and rampage like young thugs, it's not a good sign usually. I got into fights with all the people who biked because I did something they didn't like. So they would get off their bike with a knife in hand. The escalation of violence was insane. I got hit by 2 cars. Both times the car didn't stop. And the only thing that saved my ass is the fact that I saw them coming and I bounced off of them instead of being actually hit. But l'incivilité, the amount of lack of politeness, the amount of just raw anger in the average person, what did I see? I saw a woman cross the street with a baby in a stroller. Someone almost ran over their baby because it was red light for them and the woman just thought she could go through. The car brakes, the woman takes the baby out of the stroller, lifts the stroller and starts hitting the car with it, the hood of the car. The baby was on the floor at her feet. Like madness, this level of madness. And that's for the average citizen. These are not criminals. For actual criminal activities, yes, it's getting worse. It's not as evident to the naked eye, but you just look at the stats. I mean, violent crimes are on the rise everywhere. The way it manifests is mostly people who get mugged, people who lose their wallets to pickpockets, a lot of scam artists on the street too who target tourists. All of that is something that has an impact on the life of the people who live there, but they are put on a slow boil, so much so that they don't realize it. When I go back to France and I tell my friends, hey, it's getting worse. This country is getting worse. They tell me, no, you're crazy. It's a conspiracy. Because they don't see it, because it's happening around them. But there are more and more signs that something is going to go down, something big. Because there are many people who have nothing left to lose. And that is not a good sign. Then we have a big question, I think, coming up. I think it's this one. I wanted to get to it to end this video. I'm going to keep it for the end of the video, I think. Yep. So right there, we have Vegeta, who is asking us, or me rather, I would like to hear your reasoning for your ostensible dislike for moral relativism. I mostly believe in moral relativism besides most things which could be considered malum in se. So this is a very long comment. The only question that is being asked is about moral relativism. So if you want to read the entire one, you can actually go into the comment section. But my gripe with moral relativism is this. I believe that a constant ideological flip-flop is dangerous. I think that it's good to take from everything that you see and feed yourself from it, but not to the point where you become impossible to grasp, in a sense. If you have no principles and you have no firm beliefs, then you can be sold pretty much anything, and that to me is moral relativism. It's not saying that there exist different shades of gray and that the truth can be found in many aspects. It's instead saying that there is no such thing as the truth because every option is valid, and that is not true. It's not correct. Some options are just invalid, and there are certain philosophies that I think are dangerous and garbage, and it's the reason why I will not cover them on The Educated Barbarian. If I do one day, it's going to be to criticize them and bring them down. And that is important to say, because if you just refuse to admit that there are things that are a certain way, well, it's very easy to give up on life, because it's something I read recently. If everything is of the same value, then nothing is of value by default, by definition. And so you have to have the ability to actually assign certain points and certain importance to certain ideas, and actually not do that to others so that you can prioritize. And in life, it's the same thing. I also dislike moral relativism because it's a tool of intellectual dishonesty. It's the tool of the intellectually dishonest to refuse to have firm opinions, because if you don't have a firm opinion, you cannot be debated and you cannot be engaged intellectually. And so it also kills any type of observation or conceptualization of ideas, because you don't really have an idea. And so in a sense, I, as I said, espouse the idea that we do not want to be pigeonholed. I do that with politics, for example, where I tell you that it's stupid to call yourself right-wing, because it means that now you're supposed to ascribe to a bunch of bullshit that you might not like. Same for religion, in a sense, and philosophy. It's stupid to say I'm a Stoic. No, you ascribe to Stoic principles. You're not a Stoic yourself, because there are other things outside of Stoicism that are applicable. But if you say something like, well, Stoicism is just like this philosophy or this one, they're all the same, now you're making the mistake of trying to flatten the panorama and put everything at the same place, and you're trying to establish an equality that doesn't exist. Equality is a concept for the self, meaning that you cannot force it onto others. You cannot say, hey, I am your equal, or this concept is equal. It's something that you are going to obtain, your equality of worth, via your actions, and it's something that you have to win via strength. And so in the domain and the realm of ideas, there can be no equality, because there's always a gradation, hierarchy between ideas amongst individuals. Not absolutely, but in terms of actual opinion, it does. And so to me, if you cannot even find the guts to admit you have opinions, you're not going to be of any worth, because you're not going to be able to express your true self. So I hope that was a good explanation as to why I don't like moral relativism. That was actually the last question of the Q&A number 7. I appreciate you guys asking the questions. I always like talking to you about things like this. And if you want to learn certain things about me, or if you want to hear me talk about certain topics, please feel free to ask for the next Q&A. I'm going to let you guys go for tonight. See you soon and have a good day.